Alright, welcome to the second video explaining the movie draft. I hope it's getting a little easier for you to understand. So let's recap. The game will have anyone from 4 to 10 players. Draft order will be randomized. There will be 12 rounds and each player gets a pick in each round. There will be 44 movies total in this draft. All 44 will fall into one of the 3 categories, which are low budget films, films with a budget of less than $50 million, medium budget films, films with a budget between $50 and $99 million, and then blockbusters are films that have any budget or have a budget over $100 million. Blockbusters have a ceiling of $250 million, medium budget films have a ceiling of $225, and low budget films have a ceiling of $200 million. Low budget films have the highest floor at $100 million, followed by medium budget films with a floor of $75, and then the blockbusters floor is the lowest at $50 million. As a player, your goal is to make the most money out of your picks. When it's your turn, you can select any percentage of the films, which is 40, 30, 20, or 10%. And you can select it of any film as long as that particular selection hasn't been taken. So now let's talk about where we get our information from. How can a film like Neighbors make more than The Amazing Spider-Man 2? It's our formula. Though this formula is it's a tiny bit tricky, I think we can explain it real easy. For our formulas, only 2 numbers matter: a film's budget and a film's gross box office. We only look at U.S. domestic gross for a film, not worldwide gross. It's just too much of a headache. Remember, a film's budget determines if it's a low, medium, or blockbuster film. We get all of our information from Box Office Mojo, and that web address is boxofficemojo.com. Now let's break down this formula some more. Let's look at The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Its budget is $220 million, so that would make it a blockbuster because the budget's over $100 million. We only take the first 28 days of a film's box office totals, once again taken from Box Office Mojo. So Spider-Man's gross for 28 days is $188,957,297, which is lower than its budget of $220 million. But now we have 2 numbers. We have Spider-Man's budget, and then we have its gross. Now, since it didn't make its budget back, it should be penalized. Vice versa, if it made more than its budget, it should be awarded. That's where our unique identifier comes in. We call it the profit-budget ratio, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's the gross profits divided by the film's budget. So with Spider-Man, we would divide its profit of $188,957,297 by its $220 million budget, giving us a profit-budget ratio of 0.858. Now that we have our profit budget number, we can calculate the actual money a film has made for this game. Here's how you do it. The profit budget ratio, here's how you do it. It's the profit budget ratio times the box office gross. So with Spider-Man, we know the box office gross is $188,957,297. And our profit budget ratio is 0.858. So when we multiply those 2 numbers, we get $162,294,818. So that's not the best result considering it's a big blockbuster and it could make up to $250 million, which remember is the big blockbuster movies' ceilings. Alright, so let's look at another example. Neighbors. Its budget is $18 million, which would make it a low budget film. So the floor for this film is 100 million, and the ceiling, the most it can make, is 200 million. If you go to Box Office Mojo, you'll see after 28 days, it made $131,834, or I'm sorry, $131,834,890. So we have our two main numbers. We have our gross and our budget. Now we need to get our profit budget ratio. We would divide the gross by the budget, and then we would get a number of 7.324. That is a huge number. Remember, Spider-Man's profit budget ratio was 0.85. So, 7.324 is huge. But let's get to the actual money for Neighbors. Okay, remember that it's the profit budget ratio times the gross. That is $131,834,890 times 7.324. And then that gives us $965,579,901. Holy crap, that is a huge number. That is why we have to have these caps. Even though Spider-Man underperformed, it still made more money in theaters than Neighbors. But remember, you wanted to penalize a movie. You like I said, penalize? You want to penalize a movie when it does poorly, but reward it when it does well. So that $965 million is a ridiculous reward. That's why we will cap it at $200 million. It's still competitive with all the other films, but not so much that it destroys the game. Okay, let's look at one more example. Transcendence. This movie was a big flop. Its budget was $100 million, but it only grossed $22.3 million. So what would our profit ratio, what would our profit budget ratio be? I'll give you a chance. You can pause this video if you like. Alright? Yeah, that's right. The profit budget ratio would be a whopping 0.223. Now, do you know the actual money total? Can you figure that out? Remember, it's the gross money, the money that a film made in its 28 days, times the profit budget ratio. Okay, so in this case it would be, let's see, it made $22.3 million times its profit budget ratio, 0.223, and then that gives Transcendence $4.9 million, which is terrible. So terrible that it doesn't even reach its floor. So in that case, we would move it up to $50 million. I hope that this clarifies some things. I can give you my spreadsheet if you'd like at the start of the new draft. That way you can keep up with the score. Remember, all of our data comes from boxofficemojo.com. Whew. Alright, that was a lot. But now we're almost done. Now let's talk a little bit about strategy. I'm going to include a couple of tips for how I play. I think blockbusters are the way to go. They make the most money, their budgets are the highest, but even though they have the high budget, they usually have really nice marketing campaigns, and that gets the asses in the seats, as they say. So, for instance, in our next movie draft, the two highest valued films should be The Hobbit and The Hunger Games. They're big budget films, they have rabid fan bases that will see the film multiple times, and they don't have a whole lot of competition. I don't know if either of these movies will cap out at their $250 million, but I would not be surprised if they did. That alone makes them more attractive than, say, a film like Gone Girl. And that's a film I'm really excited about and want to see. But that's a medium budget film, which already you can see the cap for the medium budget is lower than the high budget, the blockbusters. So that's already a strike. And I don't see Gone Girl making, 250 or 225 million. I just don't see that. I don't see it capping out. So even though I want to see Gone Girl more, the big budget Hobbit and Hunger Game movies I think are the way to go. In any other big budget movie, I haven't seen all the movies, the listings yet. Okay, another thing to consider or to look out for is competition. This is a reason why I like the blockbusters. They usually don't have competition at least during the first weeks, but usually the first 2 weeks they don't have, they're the only show in town. Like, for instance, The Hobbit's main competition will be a bunch of Oscar-type movies, not necessarily big blockbusters. Another strong bet to me are children films, especially around the holiday season. Those films can do very well in this game. Think about it. Children usually don't go to see these films alone. They're accompanied by parents. That adds to the box office. Low budget films could be a nice strategy when you're unsure of a blockbuster or a medium budget film. Remember, if a low budget film does poorly, its floor is still $100 million. So that's all I've got for today. Please let me know if you have any questions at all. And I want to make 100% sure that everyone understands the rules and how to play this game. All right, thank you so much for taking time. I know it took a lot to watch this, so I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye. Thanks a lot, guys.